Since he gets home at 6, I learned his hours the night before. I'll drop back at 7, or would 8 be better? What time does your husband get home with the groceries? What do you mean? Well, who does? Have you always bought them? Boy, groceries are expensive, aren't they? I'll bet you they cost you $25 a week, don't they? What do you mean 20 or 25? You mean they cost more than $20 or $25? Let me ask you, would $50 a week be a conservative estimate of what you spend on groceries? Don't you honestly think he will trust you to invest just $400 more to cook the next $50,000 worth of food in the best and most economical manner? Just how long should you stay with a prospect? $100 a week is over $5,000 a year. Strong voice emphasis. And I'll bet you don't even talk it over with your husband, do you? Do you want to take this home yourself, or do you want us to deliver it? Do you have any time for me? Do you have any time frame? You definitely are eventually going to go ahead and do this, aren't you? In other words, just as soon as you get around to it, then you're going to go ahead and start this training program. Are you kidding me? You mean those guys went ahead and bought because you put that one on them? As soon as you fellows get around to it, you're probably going to start a good training program, aren't you? Do I carry the marble? Do I carry the baseball? Or do I carry the beach ball? Which would be more convenient for you? Would that suit your needs better? Well, it certainly suits my pocketbook better. But what do you mean by a 29-day agreement? You do feel that way, don't you, Mr. Prospect? That's the kind of protection you want for your family, isn't it, Mr. Prospect? Who do you think the government is going to send to the front lines first? The ones who would cost $10,000 if they're killed, or the ones who would cost nothing if they're killed? I wonder if you'd mind if I ask you a couple of questions. If you should see something extremely nice, which you definitely will need later on, would you be in a position to save an additional 25 cents a day to get it, provided you really wanted it. Well, if I had something in my cart which was really outstanding, truly beautiful, and something which you not only will need but will use for the rest of your life, would you be courteous enough to spend 5 minutes looking at it? What would you do if you were me? If you were in this girl's position, but knowing what you know about all of the expenses and obligations you have as a married person with a growing family, if you had had the same opportunity she has of acquiring this beautiful set of cookware before you were married, in retrospect, what would you do? With that, I turned to the single girl and said, and that's what you want to do, isn't it? Just because you did not have the chance to get it 10 years ago does not mean that you should continue to deny yourself and your family this beautiful set of cookware for the rest of your life, does it? So I said, I suppose you want the same set, don't you? If I can show you how to get this set of World Book right now without paying cash, which you've said you don't have, and without going back on your word, would you be interested? How can you do that? If I can show you how to get this set of World Book today without paying cash, without getting it on credit, and without going back on your word, would you be interested? Yeah, how could I do that? Mrs. Prospect, and I understand it, Mrs. Prospect, as I understand it, you did not make a commitment like your husband, did you? Mr. Prospect, will it be all right if I talk with your wife about solving your problem for you and your son? May I ask you just one question? In your training program, do you train your salespeople when they have an hour between appointments to utilize that time by making cold calls? Is the boss in? If he were in, where would he be? The boss isn't in, is he? As managing director of this company, you're probably always looking for ways to increase sales, aren't you? Young man, can't you see I'm busy? Tell me, I'm curious. What makes you call at this particular time? Do you really want to know? Isn't that what you teach your salesmen to do? The picture is clear, isn't it? And you know that's true, don't you? These next two phrases are negative and distracting. Do you understand what I mean? You know what I mean. Have you ever heard of anyone buying anything from a salesman because he used gutter language or took God's name in vain? Since the prospect doesn't buy because of those profane or vulgar words and might not buy because of them, doesn't it make sense to leave them out? Did you see the other picture in the heading, or was it so obvious you missed it? Yes, words do make a difference, don't they? How old is your oldest boy? What's his name? And your name is? You'd spend a few minutes on that, wouldn't you? Bob, as we've been working together, here it's become completely apparent to me that one of the drives inside of you is that Michael will have the tools and equipment so that he can meet life and whip it. Is that right? This is what you want, isn't it, Bob? Corny? It paints a vivid word picture, doesn't it? What do you mean I need 5 quarts? That last sentence is another word picture, isn't it? Which generation are they? Which cereal? Any questions? Would you want a doctor who wouldn't put a little fear into your head that if you didn't do something, that benign tumor might become cancerous? Would you want a mechanic who wouldn't let you know that if you didn't get a ring job, you might throw a rod and end up spending 5 times as much money? Thinking as a salesperson, customer, what do you think about the salesman who isn't aggressively concerned enough about the customer to take a certain amount of risk in actively encouraging the prospect to make 1 or 2 more purchases to increase the effectiveness or enjoyment of the purchase already made? When should you answer their objection? When should you answer the objection? He then raises the question, can you honestly expect someone you just defeated to buy something from you? What are they talking about? Mr. Ziegler, if I bought one of those machines, could I do what you're doing? See how beautiful the food is and how easy the machine is to operate. Mr. Wilson, if I bought that machine, could I cut my hand with it? It's not because she is an expert with the machine, but because she has the machine which does the work. And that's what all of you really want, isn't it? If the machine had only this one blade, and now I lowered my voice and looked them in the eye, how many of you have already decided you sure would like to have your own food machine? Can I see your hands, please? So why substitute the get by for the best? If it costs you $100 but does you $1,000 worth of good, then by any yardstick, you've bought a bargain, haven't you? But before we go any further, may I ask you a question? If I can answer your question to your satisfaction that this is the right product at the right time and at the right price, are you personally in a position to give me an order for the product today, and would you be willing to do so? I'm delighted you raised that question, Mr. Prospect. And to make absolutely certain I clearly understand what you're saying, would you mind repeating it? I'll bet that surprises you, doesn't it? That was another question, wasn't it? What makes you think I've decided not to buy? Mr. Prospect, would you repeat exactly what happened so I can be certain I understand the situation and we can solve the problem? Objection or question? How much does it cost? How long will it take me to get it? Do you have it in green as well as in yellow? Do you have a more expensive or less expensive model? Do you have a bigger one or a smaller one? What does it cost? I suspect your primary concern is that the product meets your needs, isn't it, Mr. Prospect? Since the product meets your needs and is easily within your price range, would you like to have me install the equipment right away, or do you have a specific date in mind? Is that your question, Mr. Prospect? Or you could shorten it and say, so your question is that right? Or you could shorten it and say, so your question is that right? Do you mind if I ask what it is? Stop and wait for his answer. Is that a valid assumption, Mr. Prospect? The right decision for you is what you're seeking, isn't it, Mr. Prospect? With this in mind, could we think together for a minute to make certain you arrive at the right decision, which is what you want, isn't it, Mr. Prospect? Do you like it? Do you want it? Can you afford it? The only remaining decision is, when do you want to start enjoying the benefits? Obviously, you are the only one who can answer that question. But Mr. Prospect, May I ask you another question? Since benefits and enjoyment can start only when you acquire the product, your only decision boils down to when you want to enjoy the benefits, doesn't it, Mr. Prospect? With this in mind, doesn't it make sense to vote yes for now benefits? Do you want to think about it because I may have overlooked some salient point in my presentation? What is it you really want to think about? Would you elaborate on this? Is there something you feel uncomfortable about? Something else you want to know? With that in mind, don't you think you ought to start enjoying the benefits now? You never say, do you understand what I'm saying? Instead, you ask, have I made myself clear? Or have I clarified this point to your satisfaction? How many do you answer? How many objections should you answer before you attempt to close? Mr. Prospect, let me ask you a question. Is this the only thing which stands between you and ownership of? Or is there something else you need to consider? I believe that answers your question, doesn't it? Is that what you're saying? Is that all right? Is that fair enough? Is that all right? Does that make sense? Surely, Mr. Prospect, this satisfies you on the price, doesn't it? Does this answer your question as it relates to our service reputation? May I then remove the question concerning our service capability? I believe, Mr. Prospect, that's your major concern, isn't it? I believe, Mr. Prospect, in your own mind, you feel pretty good about our guarantee, don't you? Would you mind sharing with me why you feel this way? Now, let me ask you, would you like to take the product with you, or would you prefer that we deliver it to your door? Assuming it's a product the customer could take with him or merchandise that you deliver. You seem to be leaning toward the red, or do you prefer it in blue? Did you want to use your charge card, or were you going to handle it by check or cash? 1 egg or 2? Tell me, Mr. Prospect, would you want it in Old English, Modern American, or Corinthian script? Do you want to cut the grass or wash the windows? Do you want to settle for a B, or would you prefer to complete the assignment? Would you like to live longer or keep smoking? Would you like for me to rotate the tires and give you an extra 5,000 miles, or leave them as they are? Shall I pick you up at 7:30, or would 8 o'clock be better? Would you like soup or salad with your dinner? Would you like to pay the speeding ticket now, or do you prefer to go to court on the 1st of August? Since all of us sell every day, doesn't it make sense to learn how to do it more effectively? How do you deal with a prospect who is currently buying from an old and trusted supplier who offers virtually the same product at roughly the same price, gives approximately the same service, and has the added advantage of being a friend or relative with many years' experience in satisfactorily handling the account? Mr. Prospect, if there were a way for you to buy the same product from your current supplier at a better price and get better service in the process, you would be interested in knowing how to do that, wouldn't you? Yes, how could I do that? Number one, at this precise moment, do you feel any obligation whatever to buy anything from me, a complete stranger whom you've never seen before? Do you feel any obligation or indication to continue buying from your current supplier who is a close friend and with whom you've been dealing for umpteen years? Would you agree with this premise, Mr. Prospect? Then, Mr. Prospect, since you aren't obligated to me, but feel obligated to him, doesn't it make sense that I would be willing to work harder, give you better service, and take care of the account in a more anxious to please manner? Without being presumptuous, Mr. Prospect, would I be wrong to assume you have considerable interest in the bottom line? Then, if you could get a better price, better quality, and or better service, any of these three things would have a direct bearing on your satisfaction and your profitability, wouldn't it? With this in mind, Mr. Prospect, and since you've already recognized your first loyalty is to yourself, don't you feel it would be in your best interests to at least give me a chance to prove I can and will give you more for your money? Could we start you with one gross, or would you go for three and the larger discount that goes with it? If I share those ideas with you, which I'm willing to do, would you be willing to give me the extra business which my ideas generate? Does that sound like a good idea and a fair exchange, Mr. Prospect? However, if you put the imitation and the original up for sale, there would be a substantial difference in price, wouldn't there? You do want the best product at the best price, don't you, Mr. Prospect? You do want the best for your money, don't you, Mr. Prospect? What is your experience? Do I understand you correctly? When do you want me to start? Right away, or would the first of the week be better? Don't you think you now deserve to start enjoying some of the fruits of all those years of labor and effort? What about it, Mr. Prospect? You do like the property, and you do enjoy both golfing and fishing, don't you? Can you really think of any reason you should deny yourself the realization of this dream for which you've worked all of your life? Will it be at your convenience and according to your schedule, or according to when it ruptures and creates considerable pain and an immediate emergency? How do you persuade people to take action? Where would you place the sofa in this room? Where would you put Johnny's bed? Would you prefer it against the wall or more in the center of the room? If this beautiful home had only this gorgeous view, or if the tour of the home ended with this magnificent living den and kitchen, it's already exciting to see, isn't it? If this house had nothing but this location, it would merit consideration, wouldn't it? Successful businessmen are almost unanimous in their agreement on this principle. But what's your personal feeling about this? If this were the only feature this machine had, it would be well worth owning, wouldn't it? When we install this equipment, would you like for me to demonstrate the major features again? Would you prefer to accept delivery today, or would next week fit your schedule better? Would you like me to mark this one sold while we check on the most agreeable terms to finance it for you? Do you need to consult with anyone else before you place the order? Is the purchase order issued from this department? Would you like to have your own bank finance this, or would you like for us to work out the financial arrangements? Since the item is in short supply, would you be willing to wait 3 weeks for delivery? Would you want to make a large deposit so the monthly deposits are smaller, or would you prefer a minimum deposit and slightly larger monthly deposits? Would you prefer this in green, or does the red appeal to you more? Shall we ship it by motor freight or air express? Do you want the lot registered in your name or wife's name? Do you prefer the lot on the golf course, or does the one on the lake appeal to you most? If you saw that it was to your advantage to own this product and the terms we work out are satisfactory, would you have any objections to going ahead today? Can you see the financial advantage to reducing the use of those powerful overhead lights, which provide unneeded light in some areas in favor of using point of impact lighting during certain times of the day? Do you believe it's wise to invest in solidly constructed equipment which will give you long, trouble-free operation for the lifetime of the product? Are you investing in the stock market at the present time? Are you seeking capital gains or income? Can you give me a measure of the degree of risk you wish to take? Are you aggressive or conservative? What does your portfolio consist of? Please, if you will, give me an example of your last transaction and when. Usually we are looking for commitments anywhere from to how much capital do you normally commit? Now, Mr. Prospect, given all these parameters of the investment, would you be in a position to make a prompt decision? Of the stocks you own, do you have any that have not lived up to your expectations? How long have you held the stock? Why have you not sold this when it hasn't performed? Why? Wouldn't you agree with this? Isn't it best that we recognize that it hasn't worked out for whatever reasons and made the decision to rectify this situation by moving out of and positioning into? You love this view, don't you? Do you like this view as well as the other? Then the other suite is the one you want, isn't it? Mary, if these were the only two China patterns in the whole world, and you had to make your choice right now as to which one you are going to choose, which one of these two would you choose? Mary, would you want this in the 5-piece or the 7-piece place setting? Do you want this single light globe, or would you like 3 for the 15% discount? If I show you something that could save you on your firm, if I show you something that can save you or your firm a great deal of money, are you in a position to act on it now? What do you think about this? How do you feel about this? Does this come in green? Do you want it if it comes in green? We can have it for you in 3 weeks, or would you prefer that I put a rush on it so you can have it in just 2 weeks? Do the draperies come with the house? Do you want it if the draperies come with the house? Will you take it if I can make arrangements for the draperies to come with the house? This is beautiful in red, isn't it? The added weight gives much greater comfort, doesn't it? The extra horsepower is a real bonus, isn't it? This extra economy will steamroll the competition, won't it? The additional color gives it an added dimension, doesn't it? This evening view should give you a lot of beautiful memories, shouldn't it? Your next reading of Secrets will make you even more aware of the tie downs I've used throughout the book, won't it? It will be helpful if I know whether this suit is for a specific occasion, or would you like it to blend with the rest of your wardrobe so that you can get maximum mileage out of your clothing dollars? By the way, did you want this as an individual item, or did you want it to blend with the rest of your decor so you get maximum mileage from your furniture dollars? Do you mind if I ask them now? Isn't that right, Mr. Prospect? By the way, Mr. Prospect, if, and you really emphasize with strong voice inflection the word if, you were to consider this program, would it be more convenient to handle it on our $20 per month investment program, or do you generally handle amounts like this on a 60-day cash plan? Which would you prefer? In, and you mildly emphasize the word in. Getting this, would it make any difference whether the deposits fell on the 1st, the 15th, or would the 25th be better? Well, I don't suppose really it makes a lot of difference. Why don't we make it the 25th? This is Mr. J.J. Johnston, isn't it? Were those payments for 20 months or 18 months? How long will it take for delivery? Suppose I set it upon the monthly program and then elect to pay it off. What's the penalty? What do you think, honey? With this lead in, do I need to remind you that your prospect will also find it helpful in making the right decision? Does that idea appeal to you, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect? Mr. Prospect, which of these weigh heaviest? The reasons for going ahead or the ideas opposed? Zig, does that kind of stuff really work? It's refreshing to know there are folks like your wife in our country, isn't it? What can the man say but something nice? Actually, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, nobody is making any kind of service. Actually, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, nobody is making any kind of sacrifice for anybody, because even though the wife might be the one to use the product, everyone in the family is going to benefit, and it is the entire family we're concerned about, isn't it? Isn't that right, Mr. Prospect? Does that stuff really work? How could I have made such a mistake? How long is that? Mr. Prospect, do you think my mother was telling me the truth? The question is, what is the prospect going to do? Mr. Prospect, will you accept my apology, and can we still be friends? Did I really see and hear what I saw and heard? Mr. Prospect, I just got carried away, but would you mind if I asked you a question? Mr. Prospect, if I saw that you were about to make a mistake, which would cost you money and cause your wife to do a lot of extra unnecessary work, would you appreciate it if I told you about it? Or would you just figure it was none of my business? Mr. Prospect, approximately how long do you think your child will ride this bicycle? If these brakes were only effective one more time in a 5-year span, they would be worth far more than $20, wouldn't they? The procedure was effective because the salespeople were absolutely convinced of the truth of the statement. Or was it a question? The question is, did you believe him when he said he was just looking? Can I help you? What do you mean, we got lucky? When you go shopping, would you rather find what you want in the first store or the 10th store? Odds are about 43-1 you would much prefer to find what you want in the first store, wouldn't you? Is that fair enough? The "is that fair enough" question will almost always bring a yes answer. Our attitude is affected when the prospect buys, isn't it? Where did he make the mistake? Where did he make the sale? Now, I don't think there's a doubt in your mind, is there? How much chance do you think he would have had to make the sale? She looked right at my wife and with a twinkle in her eyes said, "Honey, that is a beautiful coat, isn't it? How does it feel?" Guess who left there with the coat? I just couldn't let her down, could I? Does it work? Question for the guys. When you were single and courting, or if you still are, did you ever ask your date, "Honey, can I hold your hand? Do you mind if I put my arm around you? Is it all right if I kiss you? Just one time. That's all I want, just one kiss." Next question. Did you ever kiss a girl? Did the suitor in the above example kiss you without permission? Yes or no? Liars say no. Then how does the prospect say yes? Fellows, did you ever try to hold hands with a girl and she said no? Then a few minutes later you were walking down the street holding hands? Why don't I stop by tomorrow afternoon at 5:30 on the way home and get my goodnight kiss then? Now that you're selling products, goods, or services, why don't you follow identically the same procedure? Will you marry me? Will you give me an order? Would I be interested in a device that dramatically reduced algae buildup in my pool while saving up to 50% on my pool chemicals? Would I like to have the cleanest pool in the neighborhood and spend less than 10 minutes a week in the process? Would you like for me to do that? Do you want to give me a check or do you prefer to put it on a credit card? Of course she wasn't my wife until we got married, was she? As a matter of fact, how would you feel about their credibility if they were wildly or sloppily dressed? Would you take them or their advice as seriously? And we do trust our family, don't we? Will that be all right with you? We also buy from those we trust, don't we? Who is he? Would you like it for Christmas? Why don't you just try? Why don't you try just one more time? What will it do? Well, Mr. Prospect, have you sold yourself, or should I sell you more? Never ask, have I got you sold? My name is Zig Ziglar. Would you check my mail, please? My name is Cameron Wilson. Would you check my mail, please? Do you have a reservation? When? How long? Oh, it was 3 weeks. And would you please see if I've had any phone calls? Do you consider yourself an honest woman? Okay, question number 2. If the President of the United States were to walk through the door and come up to you and say, I want a room, now tell me the truth, would you have one for him? Will it work for you? Need I remind you this procedure can be adapted and slightly changed when you seek an item which is in short supply, or when you need a service favor on a holiday or a weekend. Bernie, why do you always answer a question with a question? Bernie, why do you always answer questions with questions? Well, why not? Can you see where this would save you money? Are you interested in saving money? If you were ever going to start saving money, when do you think would be the best time to start? Can you see where this would be better for your health? Are you interested in better health? If you were ever going to start taking care of your health, when do you think would be the best time to start? Can you see where this would save you some time and work? Are you interested in saving time and work? If you were ever going to start saving time and work, when do you think would be the best time to start? Can you see how using this sales training course would increase your sales? Are you interested in increasing your sales? If you are ever going to start increasing your sales, when do you think would be the best time to start? Do you know all there is to know? Would it be generous to say you know half of all there is to know? And if you only know half of all there is to know, wouldn't you have to admit the possibility that God may exist in the body of knowledge you do not have? Which kind of doubter are you? Did you know that there is a promise to the honest doubter in God's word? How do I go about making such an investigation? Now, where was this man's real problem? Did everyone get out okay? Have you ever had a major property loss before? Have you ever had a major property loss before? Did you ever have a claim on a car wreck or damage? How did it go? You are already familiar with how insurance company adjusters work in order to minimize the settlement amount. Did you know you have a right to a professional representative when you suffer a loss such as this? Do you understand, Mr. Prospect, that whether or not you want to be, right now, you are your own claims adjuster? Do you feel knowledgeable enough to negotiate with the expert the insurance company will send out to adjust your loss? Do you have as high a regard for your money, Mr. Prospect, as the insurance company does for its money? Do you realize they're going to send out a professional to protect their money? Their claims adjuster is a professional, so do you think it would be in your best interest to have a professional protecting your money? You do understand that the insurance company is not simply going to say, "Send us the bill and we'll pay it," don't you? Mr. Prospect, wouldn't it be a problem for you and your wife to take time away from work and family to sift through, sort out, write down, and price everything you lost in your home, from the brushes in the closets to the number of socks in your drawers? Would it be convenient for you to meet with the adjuster, restoration people, dry cleaners, and others who need access to your home and belongings? When you get down to negotiating the loss, will you feel comfortable the figures being presented are just and fair to you? Mr. Prospect, did you know that our average increase after the insurance company's first offer is 30%? Is that the kind of situation you'd like to participate in, Mr. Prospect? Would you like for us to start working for you today so you can move back into your home at the earliest possible moment? Or is there any particular hurry? This is what you want, isn't it, Mr. Prospect? What do you prefer? How long is the warranty? When would the first payment be due? How much is the deposit? How long will it take me to get the delivery? What is your service policy? Where do we get spare parts? Do you have a warranty? How much did you say the deposit was? What do you think, dear? What is the real rate of interest? How long would it take me to get it installed? What is an impending event?